On the safety question, underground nuclear waste storage is, by many, considered to be safe. So we're talking about storing this nuclear waste 300 meters underground, and the risks only are 10,000 years down the line, is what most people consider to be the risk. So if the risk is 10,000 years down the line, can't we foresee that we'll be able to deal with any potential leakage? What many of these designs see is that you have an ability to access the barrels that are stored down 300 meters underground, so that if a leak happened, and you'd have sensors down there, that 2,000-3,000 years down the line, you could then access it and deal with the problem. If it's just storing it and then cementing the whole thing, maybe you can't access it, maybe that's not as good of a way to store it. So there are different ways to store nuclear waste to make it manageable long term and reduce the risks. But somebody says all nuclear waste storage is dangerous. There's no good option. This is Jeremy Scher, in quote. The article is, "What is the best way to dispose of nuclear waste?" Question mark. This is a Moment of Science, which is a blog, and this is in March 23rd, 2010. Quote, "There have been a few other interesting ideas, such as burying nuclear waste beneath the ocean floor. Scientists have also thought about putting waste in really deep holes, burying it in polar ice sheets and stashing it beneath uninhabited islands. But there are problems with each of these ideas. For example, it would be difficult to monitor nuclear waste under the ocean floor. Waste buried deep in the earth, meanwhile, might contaminate groundwater. And as ice sheets continue to melt, it's hard to say how long nuclear waste should remain buried, or where it would end up if it floated away. Plans to store waste produced in the United States in Yucca Mountain in Utah have been put on hold. So for now, almost all nuclear waste is kept above ground in special containers at a few hundred different sites around the country. So far, the containers seem safe, but there's always the possibility of corrosion. So basically, there is no best way to store nuclear waste." So this is kind of a naysayer's dream argument. Everything's bad, everything's equally bad. I don't really buy it. There are always differentiations between good, slightly better, slightly worse options. And the point for underground nuclear energy is that it is the least bad option. I tend to buy that argument. But underground storage will never overcome societal fears. No matter how much we try to explain these little nuances, pros and cons, people locally are always going to say, "Not in my backyard." They're going to say, "This is potentially going to affect me down the line." Risks are always there, so the fears will always be present. Underground storage, sometimes it makes sense, sometimes does not. So this is neither a pro or a con. It's more of a conditional argument. In many cases where there are fault lines, like earthquake fault lines, there are concerns that the storage facility might be subject to an earthquake and a shifting of the fault, and then there will be radioactive leakage from that. Other sites have no geological activity, so they're much safer. So it's definitely a case-by-case situation. Underground storage has with the potential future use is a bad idea. This argument is very specific to the question of reprocessing. So if a company wants to have access to a storage facility for the potential for reprocessing and future nuclear energy use, that potential exists, but many say this is a bad idea because providing that access is expensive. It also has certain risks involved. I don't know a lot about this argument, so forget it. Underground storage, very expensive, adds to nuclear expense. For sure, to build the Yucca Mountain facility, that was billions and billions of dollars. It was like $20 billion invested in that research of it, and then it was canceled. $20 billion. That's a lot to waste on an underground nuclear storage facility. So for sure, this adds to the bigger equation of nuclear energy costs, which is big anyway. It takes a huge amount of money to invest in a nuclear facility. Building these huge, huge steam columns, very expensive, so potential problem. Nuclear waste storage requires huge state subsidies. For sure, Yucca Mountain was based entirely on the state subsidizing that, so the private industries cannot support it on their own. If you're a free marketeer, maybe this would upset you. Have a look at our article, The Many More Pros and Cons. It is Debate, quote, Underground Nuclear Waste Storage. And my name is Brooks Lindsay. Take care.